All right, let's get into it. We are about to go on a pretty wild ride, a full 12,000 years into the past, to figure out how one of Europe's oldest kingdoms was literally forged from ice, from stone, and, you guessed it, from the fury of the North. This is the story of Denmark. So at first glance, this just looks like a big, old, carved-up rock, right? But it is so much more than that. This is the Jelling Stone. And you can think of it as Denmark's birth certificate. It's a public declaration carved 1,000 years ago that a nation had officially been born. But this story, it doesn't start here. Oh no, it starts way earlier. And that really is the big question, isn't it? How in the world do you go from scattered tribes of reindeer hunters trekking across a frozen wasteland to a unified kingdom that would one day dominate the seas and build a legacy that lasts over a millennium? Well, it's an incredible story of survival, of innovation, and of raw ambition. To find the answer, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, back to a world that was just starting to thaw out from the last great ice age. You can imagine, this was a world of unbelievable hardship, but also unbelievable opportunity. Okay, first thing you need to do is just forget the map of Denmark you know today. 12,000 years ago, it looked completely different. The sea levels were way lower, so much lower that this huge plain of land we call Doggerland actually connected what would become Denmark to Great Britain. The first humans here weren't Danes, they were nomads, hunters following herds of reindeer and elk across a pretty bleak, frozen landscape. Now, what's so cool about this is it just shows you how people had to constantly adapt. As the world literally changed beneath their feet, they changed with it. The Maglemosian folks were the first to really settle down. Then, as the world warmed and forests grew, the Congomosa culture adapted. When the seas rose and created the islands we see today, the Erdebole people turned to the ocean to survive. And then came the biggest game changer of all, farming. It was brought in by the funnel beaker culture, and yeah, they're named that because of their cool funnel-shaped pottery, and it laid the foundation for, well, everything that came next. And that shift from chasing animals to planting crops was the spark for everything that followed. It meant bigger populations, permanent villages, and it freed up people's time to develop all sorts of new technologies and new ideas. And this slide just shows that leap perfectly. On the left, you've got a Stone Age dolmen, a tomb from around 3000 BC. It's massive, it's powerful, but it's pretty simple. Now look to the right. That's the Bronze Age Trundholm sun chariot from around 1500 BC. Just look at the artistry, the detail. This isn't just a jump in technology. It's a huge leap in mythology, in religion, in social structure. You just don't build something that intricate without a really complex society to back it up. But you know, some of the most amazing discoveries from this time didn't come from giant tombs. They came from the ground itself. The peat bogs of Denmark, as it turns out, were really good at holding on to their secrets. And this is one of those secrets. You are looking at the face of the Tulland man. He lived during the Iron Age, more than 2,000 years ago. The bizarre, oxygen-free chemistry of the bogs preserved him in just astonishing detail. I mean, right down to the stubble on his chin. Finds like this are incredible. They just bridge millennia in a heartbeat and give us this deeply personal human connection to someone who might have been the victim of a ritual sacrifice. And you know, these people were not living in isolation. Not at all. As you can see here, Iron Age Denmark was already plugged into a huge European network. You see strong Celtic influence in their artwork, they were trading extensively with the Roman Empire, were still digging up Roman coins in Danish soil. Some evidence even suggests their warriors served as Roman mercenaries. And then, around 200 AD, a total game changer. The first runic writing appears, finally giving these people a voice of their own. And all of this, the constant adapting, the new technology, the growing connections to the wider world, it all sets the stage for the period that would define Denmark forever, the Age of the Vikings. This magnificent thing was their ultimate weapon, their greatest piece of tech, the longship. It was fast, it was flexible, and it could handle both the open ocean and shallow rivers. This ship gave the Danes the power to go places and do things in a way the world had just never seen before. It was the key that unlocked a whole new era of raiding, trading, and conquest. Now, it's so important to understand the two faces of the Viking. On one hand, yes, they were absolutely terrifying raiders who laid siege to Paris and conquered a huge chunk of England, which became known as the Danelaw. But they were also brilliant traders and explorers. They set up trade routes that stretched from Greenland all the way to Constantinople. They sailed the great rivers of Russia to trade with the Byzantine Empire. They were destroyers and builders, warriors and merchants, all at the same time. And all of that activity created this, a sphere of influence that stretched across all of Europe. You don't need to get lost in the details here, just look at the map on the left. From their home base in Denmark, you can just see their power spreading across the known world. At their absolute peak, Danish kings ruled a massive North Sea empire that included England and Norway. This wasn't just random raiding anymore, this was kingdom building. Which brings us right to the climax of our story. This is the moment when all that Viking energy and power was finally focused inward, consolidated at home, to create a single, unified kingdom. Okay, so let's go back to those stones we saw at the beginning. There are actually two of them. The first, smaller one, was put up by a guy named Gorm the Old, who's considered the first real king of Denmark. But it was his son, Harald Bluetooth, and yes, that is where the name for your phone's Bluetooth technology comes from, who put up the second, much bigger stone to make a huge statement to the world. And this is what he had carved on it. It's basically a press release in stone. It's a declaration of power and of faith. Harald announces that he has conquered all of Denmark and Norway, uniting them under his rule. And then, in a move that would change everything, he declares that he made the Danes Christian. So around the year 965, Denmark officially becomes a Christian kingdom. Now, this was a massive deal. It aligned Denmark with the major powers of Europe, and it gave the king a really powerful tool to centralize his rule and unite his people under one faith. The Viking Age was drawing to a close, but a proper kingdom was just getting started. By the late 11th century, the golden age of Viking invasions was pretty much over. The death of King Canute IV in 1086 is often seen as the symbolic end of that era. The great fleets stopped sailing out to raid Europe. But the most important thing they ever built, the Kingdom of Denmark, that was here to stay. So there you have it. From Ice Age hunters to Viking sea kings, a kingdom was forged. The Viking Age itself passed into legend, but the monarchy that Harald Bluetooth created endures to this very day, which makes it the oldest in Europe. And that kind of leaves you with a pretty big question, doesn't it? What does it take? What's that secret ingredient, that mix of adaptation, power, and identity that allows a legacy to last for more than 1,000 years?